South Carolina has made the unpopular decision to reduce unemployment benefits to encourage people to get back into the workforce. Wow, crazy. I'm going to explain that, but then could other states also be following suit? It's possible, okay? Without fear-mongering, it's possible. I'll explain coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. All right, so last week a lot actually happened with the labor market, labor force, and interesting to see the trend here. And I'm going to break it down for you, but the headliner announcement was that South Carolina said, listen, we got to get people back to work. And as a way to encourage people to get back to work, we are going to, as of June 30th, stop receiving the federal funds for the pandemic unemployment assistance. Now, what does that mean? Right now, it's an extra $300 per week on top of what the state provides from South Carolina that unemployed citizens are receiving right now. That's per week, and it was originally, you know the drama, okay? But they've extended that $300 nationally into September, okay? And South Carolina said, listen, this is creating a disincentive for people to get back into the workforce. We're going to voluntarily stop it. We're stopping it at the end of June. Montana, this is the second state that's already done this. Montana said, listen, we don't want anything to do with it. From the very beginning, it's my understanding, they didn't opt in and then opt out. They just said, we don't want anything to do with it. So now we've got two states in the union that have said, no additional federal funds for unemployment. Here's the thing, guys. Before we get into some of the trends here, I think a dichotomy is happening right now. Two things that are sort of at odds with each other are coexisting. There are people that have lost their jobs due to the shutdowns and the pandemic and everything, and are having a difficult time financially and are unable to get back in the workforce right now for whatever reason. That's happening, and therefore the additional $300 per week of pandemic unemployment assistance is a huge help for them. But then there's also folks at the same time. There are folks that say, my job pays me this, and on unemployment, I'm receiving this plus this, and therefore, I'm not going back to work until the math works. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, and I see them on the channel, they leave comments and so on. I mean, and even my wife, where she works, makes, decent hourly wage, but when you look at what she would make per week on unemployment, when you add that extra $300, you make more on unemployment, okay? So the math then, you've got folks that are struggling and need the support until they can find a job. And then there are others that say, I could go get a job, but I'm actually getting paid more on unemployment. Both are happening. And so that's creating a very tricky situation in the labor market. Could more states follow suit? Or will the Fed extend the extra $300 when it comes due in September? Let's talk about some of these trends right now. The first trend that I'd point to is the overall labor force participation rate. And we could dive into the total number of jobs available, jobs lost, that sort of thing. But if you just look at the labor force participation rate, number one, you blow out in this chart, and it's been trending downhill. So that's disappointing. But if you look at that participation rate, you can see obviously a significant drop last spring, okay? March, April, huge drop as jobs were eliminated, okay? And then as the stimulus really kicked in, okay, you can see a sharp increase and then some slow and steady kind of jumping up and down. But when you look at it, we're not even halfway back to where we were to pre-pandemic levels. We're not even halfway back to pre-pandemic levels in labor force participation rate. There is more than half of the people that were working have not returned to work. Now, I think part of that is people saying, listen, it feels unsafe. my job has changed, I've got to wear masks, or people are rude, or I've heard all sorts of it, all legitimate reasons why, listen, I'm going to retire early. But you can't explain that entire delta to people that were really close to retirement, can actually afford to retire, and they're just not going to go back to work. This shows that the overall labor force participation rate is significantly lower than where it was before the pandemic. And as we can tell from supply chain issues and other things, lower than really it could be and should be. And that leads right into the next point. I mean, if you look at the second trend, job openings are through the roof. Okay, so if you look at that chart of job openings, we are back to and above pre-pandemic levels, okay? And the latest chart that I'm looking at is as of February. Tons of people are looking for jobs here in May. And so I'm saying that if we had real-time data, the number of jobs posted or open right now, maybe I just didn't look hard enough, I couldn't find it, but it's got to be higher than pre-pandemic levels. The latest charts that I've seen show it's at or slightly above pre-pandemic levels, and today it's even worse, okay? And so the participation rate in the labor force is down, and employers looking for people to hire is significantly up. All that suggests that more states could potentially follow suit, or that the Fed come September might say, yeah, we're not extending this, all of a sudden hard stop to the 300, no tapering off. And then you've got this trend as well. And this was an absolute shock. This came out last Friday. The April jobs report came out, and economists usually get this right. I mean, here's the thing. Surprises typically don't bode well for the stock market. And why? Because we've just got so much data. Economists are just so good at anticipating what's ahead, and investment bankers are just so good at predicting how much sales a company is expecting, what their profits will be. So there's so much data out there, it's hard to have a surprise. There was an enormous surprise with April's job report. Economists were expecting 1 million jobs added, a huge number, and yet not unfeasible based on, the economy coming back online. Guys, we didn't add 1 million jobs. We added 266,000 in the month. That is an enormous miss, And you could say, the unemployment rate increased. The unemployment rate increased even though the labor force participation rate remains very low. That is concerning. Well, is that because the economy is not as strong as what we think? And I don't think so. If you're trying to put a pool in your house right now, you're getting on someone's calendar for 2022 and you're paying a lot more for it. I think the economy, as far as strength, because of the aid and the money printing, I think is fine. I think this shock in unemployment numbers is simply due to people aren't returning to the workforce, possibly because mathematically it just doesn't make sense for them to do so. Unemployment's just too rich. Okay, so what are the implications? What does this mean to you? Do I think more states will follow what South Carolina has done and get off and end the pandemic unemployment assistance early? I actually do. However, getting voted into being a politician is still a popularity contest, and this has to be wildly unpopular. There's folks within the South Carolina Congress that are saying, don't do this. Don't do this. This is a huge career mistake. So could more states be looking at this? Yeah, I think so. Will we all of a sudden see every state in the union drop out of this? I don't think so, because they've got their own self-interest, right? This is a terribly unpopular decision. I think what's more likely is we will see the Fed and the Congress end this program come September. Could they taper it out and drop it from 300 to 100 and then nothing? Maybe. I just don't think they extend it. It started, at 400 a week back last year. Then it dropped off. Then they tried to bring it back at 400, but 300 was going to come from the Fed, and it's been 300 really ever since. I think that starts to either go away completely or starts to taper off. So If you're receiving these unemployment benefits right now, do you need to panic? No. Just make sure you're making wise choices with this extra money, because it could go away at any moment, and I would expect it. There is a shelf life to this. There is an end date to this in the foreseeable, very near future. So start making plans financially. Work with your CFP right now. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with a K. WiseMoneyShow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@Korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.